video, we're going to look at the eraser tools, and there are three there: eraser tool, the background eraser tool, and the magic eraser tool. Now, I want to point out that there's a whole lot of tools here, and it'd be kind of intimidating, but there are many tools I've mentioned I don't even really use. Some of these tools are old tools that have been around from very early versions of Photoshop. They've never removed them, but there are better ways that have been introduced to do some of the same task. The eraser tools, for me, fall in that same category. I rarely use the eraser tool and probably never use the background eraser or magic eraser. There are other techniques that work just as well or better and give me more control. But let's look at what these tools do. So we'll look at the eraser tool first. The eraser tool, of course, uses a brush like we've been using with other painting tools. And notice that in the layer, most images we open, we're going to have a background layer. That's a special layer that has some protections to it. So if I'm erasing on the background layer, it's going to erase with whatever my background color is. So in this case, I chose white, and as I erase, I'm going to basically get a white area. It's almost like painting with white. I'm going to undo that, Control Z. Let's just change that background color. If I make it red, now when I erase, I'm basically getting red. I can take the background though, and I can change the name. I'm going to double click on the background. Brings up a little dialog for a new layer. I'm just going to say layer 0. It's actually going to rename this from background to layer 0. And now it doesn't have the protections it had before. And if I erase with the eraser, I'm actually going to get transparent. The concept here is that there might be layers below this we want to have revealed in this transparent area. With the eraser tool, we can adjust the opacity. So I can say I only want to erase maybe down to 17%. And so it's making the area semi-transparent. Just going to erase all of those. The background eraser tool probably is a little bit misnamed. It's not necessarily designed to identify and erase the background because it doesn't recognize what is a foreground, what's a background with this tool. Now there are some new AI tools that do that very well, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute. The idea here is you can select your brush and then choose whether you want to do contiguous or discontiguous. I'm going to do discontiguous because I want to be able to get this sky in between the pole and the flag. And then you can set a tolerance. So what's the range in which you want to have pixels erased based on where you originally click? Now in this image we have a very nice solid blue background. It's going to make it really easy. I'm going to increase my brush size considerably. And I can begin brushing, and notice I'm getting the transparent pixels. When I come up to the flag, it's not selecting the flag. Those are outside the range that we've selected. And so in this case, it's doing a really good job of selecting the background or all the light blue pixels. That worked pretty well. Then what I could do is I could take another image. I'm going to do a Control A to select all the pixels and Control C to copy. Go back to my flag image. And here I'm going to paste. That's going to give me another layer. And I can drag that layer then below my layer 0 so that we have a composite now of the flag on top of the image. Now one thing to notice here in this image is it's pretty obvious it's a composite just because of the tonal quality differences between the two. I'm working on the drive layer rather than the flag layer. In fact, it's often a good idea to name your layers. We'll talk about layers in Unit 3 in much more depth. But you get an idea how layers can work together to create new images, what we call a composite. So I'm going to take this drive layer And in Unit 2, we'll talk about doing adjustments. I'm going to bring up the vibrance adjustment. And here we can increase the saturation. Gives a little more pop of color. We can also increase the vibrance, because that flag is pretty vibrant. And that doesn't look quite as much like a composite image. The tonal quality of the two layers are much more similar. Now I'm going to go back to my original flag image, because I mentioned that I don't use the background eraser tool because there are better ways to do this, and we're going to talk about selections down the road. But I'm going to go to the select menu and choose subject. Now this uses artificial intelligence where it does recognize what is likely the background and what's likely the subject or foreground. And it has selected the subject. Now, you'll notice here it didn't really get this area in between the pole and the flag. So some tools work better at different times, but this is normally I would try first, is doing the subject selection, then going to select and choose inverse, and come back and make this layer 0. I'm just going to press the delete key, and that will clear the selected pixels, and I'll have that transparent area. Now in the selection of the subject, it included the sky between the pole and the flag as part of the subject. So it didn't erase that when I did the inverse. So I'm going to touch that up, and here's where I might use then the background eraser tool. I'm going to get a much smaller brush, and I need to first then deselect. I can do a Control D, and then come in and erase that sky area between the flag and the pole. Let's look at the magic eraser. I'm going to go back to my original image of the flag, going into the history and choosing the top state of open. And here we'll select the magic eraser tool. The magic eraser tool also allows us to select a tolerance, whether we want to use a contiguous or non-contiguous area. And again, I want that area between the flag and the pole, so I'm going to uncheck contiguous. If we had multiple layers, we could sample all the layers, and then we could choose the opacity. So we could do a semi-transparent erase if we wanted. With the magic eraser tool, all I'm going to do is come over to my background. Again, I have this nice solid color here, and I'm just simply going to click. It's going to select everything within that range and delete it. In this case, for this image, that worked really well. There's a couple little spots here I might want to try to clean up. Again, between the pole and the flag, some very narrow spots. But overall, that did a really good job. If you'd like to see more videos in the Photoshop Practicum playlist, click the title at the bottom. If you'd like to be alerted to new videos, please click my photo in the top right to subscribe to the channel.